Vibing with Chris and Zenergy presents Escape to Find Myself. Vicky Alvarez had always been the apple of her mother's eye. Born to a hard-working immigrant from El Salvador, Vicky was raised in a comfortable home, lavished with love, and granted everything she wanted. But the one thing her mother, Rosa, struggled to accept was Vicky's love for women. Rosa loved her daughter fiercely, but couldn't quite reconcile her deep-rooted beliefs with Vicky's identity. By her mid-20s, Vicky had spiraled into a world of drugs and alcohol. Nights turned into hazy parties, and mornings were drowned in guilt and hangovers. Her mother begged her to change, but Vicky felt trapped in the cycle. Then one night, during one of her best friend's mischievous jokes, Vicky was introduced to Destiny Cruz. At first, she thought Destiny was just another wealthy woman trying to flaunt her lifestyle. But Destiny's sharp wit, calm demeanor, and piercing eyes pulled Vicky in like a magnet. What started as a joke turned into a whirlwind romance. Destiny, a self-made entrepreneur with her own beauty brand, lived in a luxurious home on the outskirts of Maryland. Her life was polished, glamorous, and everything Vicky wasn't. She had no children, which meant she could give Vicky undivided attention. Destiny quickly took on the role of Vicky's savior, handling her financial burdens, indulging her whims, and even tolerating her vices. For years, Vicky leaned heavily on Destiny. She moved into Destiny's home, finding solace in the lavish lifestyle that shielded her from reality. But Destiny's love, while abundant, couldn't erase Vicky's growing shame. Every time she looked in the mirror, she saw the same broken woman staring back. One morning, after a particularly bad night, Vicky woke up alone in the guest room. The sunlight streamed in, cutting through the fog of her mind. Destiny was in the kitchen, her face stoic. "Vicky," she said, her voice firm but tender. "I can love you, but I can't save you. Only you can do that." Something shifted in Vicky that day. For the first time, she saw the depth of Destiny's sacrifices. She decided to seek help, not for Destiny, not for her mother, but for herself. The road to recovery wasn't easy, but Vicky was determined. She entered rehab, where she confronted her demons and began rebuilding her life. Months turned into years, and the woman who emerged was unrecognizable. Vicky was sober, healthy, and driven. She found a steady job in a local nonprofit, helping others who had walked the same dark path. When she returned to her hometown for the first time, heads turned. The frail, lost girl they remembered was now a vibrant, confident woman. Rosa cried when she saw her daughter, holding her close and whispering prayers of gratitude. Destiny, ever supportive, stood by Vicky's side throughout her journey. Their relationship evolved into a partnership of equals, where love was no longer defined by dependence. Vicky finally felt worthy of the love she'd always been given, and with Destiny and Rosa cheering her on, she embraced her new life with open arms. Vicky wasn't just surviving anymore. She was thriving. Some needed to hear this. You can escape to find yourself. Help is always near, just take the first step. Vibing Wit Chris and Zenergy presents Female Impersonators at Capitol Theater. In the 1930s, black nightclubs in large cities like Washington, D.C. and New York regularly featured female impersonators who entertained audiences with their singing, dancing, and glamorous appearance. Labeled as pansies by the black press, these gender-non-conforming performers attracted diverse audiences that included black and white ticket holders, men and women and straights, gays and bisexuals. While the pansy craze is mainly associated with big cities, Alexandria occasionally hosted performances by female impersonators at the original Capitol Theater at Queen and North Henry Streets. Please note that some performers at the time may have identified as female and, by today's standards, some might have considered themselves to be transgender, but historians studying this time and these performers caution against applying such relatively recent labels and instead generally refer to them as gender non-conforming. The theater, having undergone renovations and changes in ownership and name, was under new management when it reopened as the Capitol in late 1932. The Capitol served the African American community, and in addition to offering motion pictures, it also hosted live entertainment, including performances by local gender nonconforming artists. Accounts from the Washington Tribune provide a look at two of these shows. In spring 1934, Henry Roberts, a young man from Alexandria, performed as Henrietta at the Capitol's amateur night. After singing I Want You, I Need You, and Stardust, he returned to the stage for an encore when audience members chanted, We want Henrietta. According to the Tribune, Roberts had the orchestra play The Carioca, and Henrietta gave the Alexandrians some new lessons on snake hips and the shim-sham, while offering a few feminine dances. A year later, the Tribune covered the appearance of Louis Diggs at the Capitol Theater. The Tribune referred to Diggs with female pronouns in quotation marks, writing that Mother Diggs sang and danced her way to the title of Alexandria's queen, flirted with the audience, and ran up and down the aisle, switching her lovely dress as if she were Mae West. After the show, Diggs reportedly had to navigate through a crowd of men, women, and children to reach a waiting car. His popularity perhaps may not have been that surprising, because although Diggs lived in Washington, he had strong family connections to Alexandria. Diggs was not only one of the most well-known and successful performers, but he also publicly defended female impersonators after a columnist for the Afro-American newspaper called the Pansy Craze a parading of filth and perversion, and the performers an army of freaks. Diggs wrote, in part, I have developed into a Louis Diggs that I alone have created, and to a generation that would have me no other way. Diggs added, Through the history of civilization, psychology tells us that there have always been homosexuals. No normal male, man or boy, would be influenced to become effeminate by viewing female impersonators unless he was already in a stage of developing into an invert. Why then are we criticized as social menaces? Although media and public interest in these performers subsided, drag shows continued within the gay community as they had before. The old Capitol Theater closed in the late 1930s and was replaced by a new theater with the same name. Henry Roberts died in Philadelphia in 1957 and was buried in Alexandria's Bethel Cemetery. Louis Diggs, who continued to work as an entertainer, died on January 14, 1996, and was laid to rest in Glenwood Cemetery in Washington, D.C.